They laughed when the woman in the charcoal sweater reached for seat 2A, never realizing they were mocking the person who would own their futures before the hour was over. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now back to Vanessa Caldwell. Terminal B at Reagan National Airport glowed beneath polished lights and towering glass walls as the late afternoon crowd moved in streams of rolling luggage, coffee cups, and hurried conversations. Business travelers in tailored suits checked watches worth more than some monthly rents. Families negotiated carry-ons and tired children. Above them all, departure screens flickered like a second skyline. Through the noise and motion walked Vanessa Caldwell, calm, measured, and almost invisible by choice. At 42, she carried herself with the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Her natural curls were tied back neatly. A charcoal sweater rested over a simple white blouse. Dark jeans, spotless sneakers, no designer labels, no dramatic jewelry. The only expensive thing on her was the watch hidden beneath her sleeve, and even that looked ordinary unless you knew what to notice. Most people did not. She pulled a modest black carry-on behind her and checked the time. Boarding had begun 7 minutes ago. Perfect. Vanessa preferred entering late. Fewer greetings, fewer delays, fewer strangers trying to impress her. In 36 minutes, Flight 908 would depart for Chicago, where a private board meeting waited on the top floor of the Lexington Tower. By tomorrow morning, one signature would reshape an entire airline. But no one in Terminal B knew that. To them, she was another passenger trying to make a flight. As she approached Gate 22, a line of first-class passengers moved through priority boarding. Gold status tags flashed from bags. Polite smiles were exchanged among people who recognized wealth in one another like members of a private club. Vanessa stepped into line without hesitation. A man in a navy blazer glanced at her sneakers, then at the priority sign, then back at her face. His lips tightened. A woman carrying a leather tote subtly moved ahead. Vanessa noticed both reactions and ignored them with practiced ease. At the scanner stood Megan Whitmore, chief flight attendant for the route, crisp navy uniform pressed to perfection. Blonde hair pinned flawlessly, lipstick untouched despite a long day. Megan was known among the crew for efficiency, discipline, and a habit of deciding who mattered within seconds. Her smile for platinum members was warm. Her smile for everyone else was procedural. She welcomed a venture capitalist by name, thanked a senator for flying with them, complimented another passenger's cufflinks, then looked up and saw Vanessa. The warmth vanished so quickly it was almost elegant. Vanessa handed over her boarding pass. Megan took it with 2 fingers, scanned it once, then looked at the screen, then at Vanessa, then back at the pass. Around them, the line slowed. "There seems to be an issue," Megan said, voice pleasant enough for strangers, sharp enough for its target. Vanessa remained still. "What kind of issue?" she asked. "This boarding pass shows seat 2A. Megan tilted her head slightly. "First class." Vanessa's expression did not change. "Yes," she said. "That's why I'm here." A few nearby passengers exchanged amused glances. Someone behind them exhaled a quiet laugh. Megan's smile thinned. "Ma'am, sometimes gate agents print incorrect zones when reservations are changed last minute." She lowered her voice, though not enough to prevent anyone hearing. "Economy boarding will continue shortly." Vanessa extended her hand for the pass. "There's no mistake." Megan did not return it. Instead, she looked Vanessa up and down with the confidence of someone certain she could read a life from fabric and posture. "I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify this." The words were professional. The tone was not. The line behind Vanessa paused completely now, drawn to the tension the way crowds always are. A young couple stopped, pretending not to listen. A man near the rope barrier raised his eyebrows. Another passenger smirked openly. Vanessa could feel the old script unfolding, the familiar one written by strangers who mistook simplicity for lack, calm for weakness, silence for surrender. She had seen it in boardrooms, hotels, restaurants, and once in a courthouse hallway. It never changed. Only the uniforms did. Megan tapped her radio. "Tyler, I need assistance at the gate." Then she looked back at Vanessa and said the sentence that would cost several people their careers before sunset. "Passengers need to be in the correct cabin, ma'am." Vanessa slowly lowered her hand, glanced at the departure clock, and checked the seconds. Then she smiled, small and unreadable. "You're absolutely right," she said. "Let's make sure everyone is exactly where they belong." The gate area fell strangely quiet. Tyler Benson arrived with the hurried confidence of a man who believed authority could be borrowed from a badge and a clipboard. He was in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, wearing a Navy Gate supervisor jacket with the airline logo stitched over the chest. He approached already annoyed, already certain he knew the problem before hearing a word. Megan handed him the boarding pass as if passing evidence in an open and shut case. "Seat dispute," she said quietly, though not quietly enough. "She insists she is in first class." Tyler glanced at Vanessa once, then at her clothes, then at the boarding pass. His expression settled into polite disbelief. "Ma'am," he said, using the tone reserved for people being corrected, "there may have been a check-in error. It happens." Vanessa stood with one hand resting on the handle of her carry-on. "Then you should be very interested to know there was no error." Tyler gave a short smile that carried no warmth. "We just need you to step aside while we review the reservation." Behind them, the boarding line had stalled completely. First-class passengers pretended to scroll phones while listening to every word. Economy passengers craned their necks from farther back. Nothing attracts attention faster than public embarrassment happening to someone else. Megan folded her arms lightly. "We cannot delay boarding for this." Vanessa looked at the departure screen, then back at Tyler. "You already have." Tyler ignored the remark. "Do you have identification?" "Of course." "Then I will need to see it." Vanessa slowly opened her tote and handed over her driver's license. Tyler read the name. His eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. "Vanessa Caldwell." He said it without recognition, like a clerk reading a receipt. "Yes." "And you purchased this ticket yourself?" Megan looked satisfied at the question. Vanessa's eyes moved to her. "Is there a reason that matters?" Tyler cleared his throat. "We have to verify potential misuse of premium seating." A murmur passed through the nearby crowd. The phrase sounded serious enough to justify anything. Vanessa took a slow breath. "Potential misuse," she repeated. "Interesting choice of words." Tyler returned the license but kept the boarding pass. "Please wait over there." He pointed toward a row of plastic gate chairs near a charging station. "We will board the remaining passengers and resolve your matter after." Megan nodded approvingly, then turned back to the scanner with her polished customer smile restored. "Next guest, please." The man behind Vanessa stepped forward immediately, avoiding eye contact as if fear of contamination could be social as well as physical. Vanessa did not move. "You are giving away my seat while holding my boarding pass," she said. Tyler's jaw tightened. "No one is giving away anything." "Then why are you boarding seat 2A without me?" Tyler had no answer ready, which irritated him more than the question itself. Megan intervened. "Ma'am, if you continue creating disruption, security can escort you from the gate." Several passengers looked up sharply at the word security. Vanessa noticed every face, every silent calculation. She had seen this pattern in conference rooms where lesser men used procedure as camouflage. When competence failed, they reached for rules. When rules failed, they reached for forceful language. She checked the time again. 28 minutes until scheduled departure. "I am not creating disruption," she said evenly. "I am witnessing it." Tyler exhaled through his nose. "Take a seat, Miss Caldwell." No, the single word landed softly and somehow carried farther than shouting would have. Megan stared at her. Tyler blinked. Even the scanner beeped into the silence. Vanessa reached into her tote once more, removed her phone, and unlocked it. Tyler stepped forward. You cannot record staff without consent. I am not recording staff. She tapped one name and lifted the phone to her ear. I am informing ownership. Megan laughed before she could stop herself. It was brief, sharp, and deeply unwise. Ownership, she said. Of the airline? Vanessa did not look at her. Yes. Tyler folded his arms. This is getting ridiculous. Then Vanessa's call connected. Her voice changed only slightly, becoming cooler, more direct. Robert, she said. I am at gate 22. Your team has decided I do not belong in my own first-class cabin. The color left Tyler's face first. Megan's smile froze a second later. Vanessa listened, then nodded once. Thank you. I will wait. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her bag. No explanation, no anger, no performance, just certainty. Tyler tried to recover. Who was that? Vanessa met his eyes for the first time since he arrived. Someone who does not enjoy delays. The gate area went quiet in a new way now. Not entertained silence. Uncertain silence. The kind that arrives when arrogance begins to suspect it has made a very expensive mistake. Tyler Benson had spent years managing irritated travelers, weather delays, missed connections, and the occasional celebrity tantrum. He believed he could recognize every kind of bluff within 30 seconds. But the woman standing in front of him was not bluffing, and what unsettled him most was how little she seemed to need anyone in the room to believe her. He straightened his jacket and forced a laugh that came out thinner than intended. All right, he said. We are done with theatrics. Megan quickly joined him, eager to reclaim control. If you are trying to intimidate staff with fake executive contacts, that is a serious matter. Vanessa tilted her head. Slightly. You mistake calm for intimidation. Boarding resumed in awkward fragments. Passengers moved past the scanner more slowly now, glancing from Tyler to Megan to Vanessa as if watching a courtroom drama no one wanted to miss. A silver-haired man accepted his first-class welcome drink and then stood just inside the jet bridge entrance, pretending to rearrange his briefcase so he could keep listening. A teenage boy in economy openly stared until his mother nudged him forward. Tyler stepped aside and lowered his voice. Ms. Caldwell, whatever game this is, it ends now. Either take a later flight in economy while we sort it out, or leave the gate area. Vanessa looked at him with measured disappointment. You offered me neither dignity nor facts, and now you are offering me threats. Megan interjected. We offered procedure. No, Vanessa said. You offered assumptions dressed as procedure. The words landed harder than volume ever could. Megan's cheeks reddened. She turned sharply to the scanner and welcomed another passenger with exaggerated brightness. Enjoy your flight, sir. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Tyler checked his tablet again, scrolling through the reservation. Seat 2A remained occupied by one name, Caldwell, Vanessa. Paid in full. No fraud alert. No duplicate booking. No downgrade request. No system notes. The record was pristine, which only made him angrier. Reality was refusing to cooperate with the story he had already chosen. There must be a manual hold, he muttered. Then remove it, Vanessa replied. There is no hold. Tyler looked up. How would you know? Because I know who placed every real hold in this company. He stared at her, searching for a smile, a wink, any signal that this was absurd humor. There was none. Across the terminal, 2 airport operations staff in reflective vests hurried past, speaking urgently into radios. A gate agent from the neighboring podium glanced toward gate 22, then quickly looked away. Small shifts in atmosphere had begun. People sensed when power was moving, even before they understood its direction. Megan sensed it too, though she fought the feeling. Tyler, she whispered. Call corporate security. Vanessa heard her and almost smiled. Please do. Megan hesitated. Confidence is loud when untested and strangely quiet when challenged. Tyler made the call anyway, speaking in clipped phrases. He gave the gate number, mentioned a disruptive passenger, then stopped speaking as the voice on the other end interrupted him for nearly 20 seconds. "Yes," he said finally. "Yes, she is still here." He lowered the phone slowly. "What did they say?" Megan asked. Tyler did not answer at first. He was staring at Vanessa now the way people stare at a locked door after hearing footsteps on the other side. "They said to keep the aircraft at the gate," he murmured. Megan frowned. "For security?" "No," he swallowed. "For executive arrival." A hush moved through the waiting area like wind across tall grass. Even the nearby conversations dropped in volume. Travelers who had nothing to do with the gate suddenly found reasons to remain close. Vanessa checked her watch. 21 minutes to departure. Right on time. She rolled her carry-on 2 feet to the side and sat in one of the plastic gate chairs Tyler had pointed to earlier. The gesture was small, almost elegant. She had refused humiliation but accepted comfort on her own terms. Then she crossed one leg, opened a folded financial newspaper from her tote, and began reading as though the terminal around her had ceased to exist. Megan stared at her. "You cannot just sit there after causing this delay." Vanessa turned one page. "Watch me." Tyler rubbed the back of his neck. Sweat had formed at his collar despite the cool air. He was beginning to replay every sentence he had spoken since she arrived, measuring each one against consequences he could not yet see. Megan was not there yet. Pride often travels slower than fear. "She is manipulating us," Megan said. "No," Tyler replied quietly, eyes fixed on the terminal entrance where several suited figures had just appeared. "I think we manipulated ourselves." Vanessa did not look up from the paper. She simply said, "Good. You are learning." Then the first black SUV stopped outside the glass doors. The first black SUV rolled to the curb outside Terminal B with the kind of precision that comes from drivers who are never late because someone else pays for lateness. Then came a second vehicle, identical and equally polished, followed by a town car carrying 2 men in dark suits already speaking into earpieces before the doors opened. Conversations across the gate area thinned into whispers. Travelers who had been pretending not to watch gave up pretending. Tyler Benson stood motionless beside the scanner, clipboard forgotten at his side. Megan Whitmore tried to continue boarding with the same bright efficiency she had worn all afternoon, but her hands betrayed her, missing the scanner twice before it accepted the next pass. The machine beeped sharply in the silence. Vanessa Caldwell turned another page of her newspaper. She did not look toward the entrance. She did not need to. She knew the rhythm of rushed footsteps, the tone of emergency politeness, the sudden straightening of spines that always followed real authority. 3 airport executives appeared first, walking fast enough to show urgency but not so fast as to seem panicked. Behind them came Robert Haynes, chairman of the airline's board, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored gray overcoat over a navy suit that looked expensive because it was simple. At 64, he carried the practiced calm of a man who had negotiated mergers worth billions and buried scandals before sunrise. Yet the moment he saw Vanessa seated near the charging station, he changed direction immediately and crossed the floor toward her. Tyler's mouth opened slightly. Megan's color drained in visible stages. Robert stopped in front of Vanessa and offered a respectful nod before she even stood. "Ms. Caldwell," he said, voice clear enough for half the gate to hear. "My sincerest apologies for this disgraceful delay." The room went still. Vanessa folded the newspaper carefully, set it on her lap, and looked up at him with mild disappointment rather than anger. "Robert," she said, "you told me customer culture had improved." He lowered his eyes for a moment. "It clearly has not improved enough." He extended his hand. She accepted it and rose. The gesture was simple, but it reordered the entire room. Passengers who had dismissed her now stared, as if trying to rewrite the last 20 minutes in their minds. Tyler took one involuntary step backward. Megan stood frozen beside the scanner, smile gone, posture rigid. Robert turned to the gathered executives. "Why is Flight 908 still at the gate?" One vice president answered quickly. "Awaiting your instruction, sir." "Then hear it now." Robert faced the cabin entrance, then gestured toward Vanessa. This aircraft does not depart until our incoming chief executive officer is comfortably seated. A collective intake of breath moved through the crowd. Someone near the rope barrier whispered, "Chief executive officer?" Another passenger lowered his phone, suddenly aware he had recorded his own ignorance. Megan blinked rapidly. "Chief executive officer?" she repeated, barely audible. Robert's gaze shifted to her. "Effective tomorrow morning, following the closing vote in Chicago, Ms. Vanessa Caldwell becomes majority owner and chief executive officer of this airline." Tyler looked as if the floor had moved beneath him. He glanced from Robert to Vanessa to the boarding pass still in his hand, now transformed from paper into evidence. Vanessa extended her palm. "My pass, Mr. Benson." He hurried forward and returned it with both hands. "Ms. Caldwell, I did not realize." "That is the problem," she said calmly. "You decided realization was unnecessary." The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. Megan stepped forward, voice trembling beneath practiced professionalism. "Ma'am, if there has been any misunderstanding, I would like to apologize." Vanessa turned toward her slowly. "You were not confused. You were comfortable." Several passengers looked down. They had heard every earlier word. They knew it was true. Robert straightened. "Operations. Hold all discretionary duties for Gate 22 staff pending review." No one needed the sentence translated. Megan's shoulders sank. Tyler stared at the scanner as if it might save him. Vanessa picked up her carry-on and smoothed the sleeve of her sweater. "Robert, I have a meeting in Chicago in less than 2 hours. Is seat 2A available now?" A few nervous laughs escaped from the crowd before dying quickly. Robert stepped aside and motioned toward the jet bridge. "It is yours, ma'am, as it always was." Vanessa paused before boarding and looked once across the silent gate area filled with polished shoes, lowered eyes, and expensive lessons. "Remember this," she said. "Luxury is not the seat. It is how people are treated." Then she walked toward the aircraft while no one dared speak. The silence inside the jet bridge felt different from the silence at the gate. There, it had been the silence of exposed arrogance. Here, it was the silence of people reconsidering themselves. Vanessa Caldwell walked forward at an even pace, carry-on rolling softly over the ribbed floor, while Robert Haynes remained half a step behind her. He was chairman of the board, but in that narrow corridor he looked like a man escorting the future. At the aircraft door, 2 flight attendants stood waiting with faces carefully reset into professional calm. One offered a strained smile. The other avoided eye contact completely. Vanessa acknowledged them with a polite nod and stepped into the first-class cabin. Seat 2A waited by the window, wide and cream-colored beneath warm cabin lights. The same seat she had paid for, the same seat she had been told did not belong to her. She placed her tote in the overhead bin without assistance, settled into the chair, and fastened her belt. Then she looked out at the runway where evening light stretched across the tarmac in long bands of gold. Robert remained in the aisle. "Would you like me to remove additional staff before departure?" he asked quietly. Vanessa shook her head. "No public theater. Accountability works better in private." He gave a small nod, understanding at once. That was one reason he had fought to bring her into the company. She did not confuse revenge with leadership. Across the aisle, a venture capitalist who had watched the scene at the gate cleared his throat. "Ms. Caldwell," he said carefully, "I owe you an apology. I assumed things I should not have." Vanessa turned toward him with calm eyes. "Then perhaps today was useful for both of us." He lowered his gaze and said nothing more. Behind the curtain separating cabins, the rest of the aircraft buzzed with rumor. Names moved from row to row in whispers. Chief Executive Officer, Owner, Fired, Gate Staff. Some details were wrong, some exaggerated, but the truth beneath them was enough. Megan Whitmore and Tyler Benson had not boarded. Another supervisor had replaced them, and the new crew moved with extraordinary attentiveness born from sudden clarity. A young attendant approached Vanessa with a glass of sparkling water. "Compliments of the company, ma'am." Vanessa accepted it with a faint smile. "Thank you. Please take care of every passenger this way." The attendant blinked, then nodded with visible emotion. Yes, ma'am. Robert took the aisle seat beside her for a final briefing before departure. He opened a leather folder filled with reports, route maps, and tomorrow's voting schedule in Chicago. You already know the numbers, he said, but several members are nervous. They should be, Vanessa replied. We spent years selling prestige while neglecting respect. That model is expensive and unsustainable. Robert almost smiled. You sound ready. She looked out the window again. I have been ready for a long time. He studied her for a moment. Most executives arrived at power hungry to be seen. Vanessa arrived determined to see what others ignored. That difference was why investors trusted her and employees would soon follow. The captain's voice came over the speaker, warm and steady. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will be pushing back shortly for our flight to Chicago with an estimated travel time of 1 hour and 48 minutes. A pause followed, then a subtle addition. And on behalf of the crew, welcome aboard. Several passengers smiled at the careful wording. Vanessa did not. She respected effort, not performance. As the aircraft door closed, Robert handed her one final page. It was a summary of customer complaints over the last 3 years. Thousands of small humiliations hidden in statistics, ignored because they were individually inconvenient and collectively profitable. Vanessa scanned the numbers once and set the page down. Tomorrow morning, she said, new training standards, anonymous reporting channels, and promotion reviews tied to service behavior. Robert nodded and made notes immediately. Anything else? She thought of Megan's smile, Tyler's certainty, the passengers who watched because discomfort becomes entertainment when it belongs to someone else. Yes, she said. End the phrase premium passenger in internal policy. Robert looked surprised. Why? Vanessa buckled her belt tighter as the plane began to move. Because every passenger paid for dignity. The cabin fell still again, but this time it was not fear. It was recognition. Outside, the aircraft pushed back from the gate that had become a classroom. Inside, Vanessa Caldwell opened her newspaper to the business section, while an airline full of people carried the weight of a lesson no luggage scale could measure. At 32,000 feet, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, and the hum of the engines settled into that steady sound which makes strangers feel suspended between one life and the next. Vanessa Caldwell closed her newspaper and watched the wings slice through a field of clouds lit silver by the setting sun. Most passengers had returned to their routines. Laptops opened. Headphones settled into place. Ice clinked in glasses. But now and then someone still glanced toward seat 2A, not because of wealth, but because they had witnessed consequence delivered without shouting. Robert Haynes reviewed figures beside her, though he knew she had already memorized them. Chicago boardroom, 9 o'clock sharp, he said. 6 members in person, 2 remote. The vote should be procedural. Vanessa looked at him. There is no such thing as a procedural vote when people fear change. He smiled faintly. That is why you are taking this chair and I am leaving it. She studied the aisle for a moment before answering. You are not leaving. You are stepping back. There is a difference. Robert accepted the correction with the humility of someone wise enough to value it. Across the cabin, the same businessman who had apologized earlier now leaned over to help an elderly passenger place her reading glasses back into a case she had dropped. A younger woman in row 3 offered her charging cable to a stranger. Small kindnesses often appear after public shame reminds people who they could have been. The lead flight attendant approached again, this time with a tray of dinner options and visibly steadier hands. Ms. Caldwell, we have herb chicken or vegetable pasta this evening. Vanessa glanced at the rows behind the curtain. What is being served in economy? The attendant blinked. Chicken pasta bowls, ma'am. Then bring me the same meal they receive. Certainly, but we also have premium selections. Vanessa's expression remained calm. I asked for the same meal. The attendant nodded quickly and left. Robert chuckled under his breath. You are making enemies among our catering department already. Good, Vanessa replied. Comfort should not require hierarchy to taste decent. He wrote that sentence down as if it were policy language. 20 minutes later, while passengers ate, Vanessa opened the complaint summary again. She had underlined repeated words: dismissed, ignored, embarrassed, profiled, rushed, spoken over. They were not operational failures. They were character failures. Companies often spend millions correcting the wrong problem. She handed the packet back to Robert. When we land, schedule listening sessions with baggage teams, gate agents, cabin crews, call centers, wheelchair staff, everyone. Even temporary contractors? He asked. Especially temporary contractors, she said. People closest to customers usually know the truth first and are ignored longest. He nodded slowly. This was how she built companies. By treating overlooked voices as assets instead of background noise. The captain announced light turbulence ahead, and the aircraft gave a gentle shiver. A few passengers looked up nervously, then relaxed as the motion passed. Vanessa barely noticed. Her attention had moved to tomorrow. Routes losing money because pride refused to reduce them. Loyalty programs rewarding spending but not loyalty. Training manuals teaching script lines instead of emotional intelligence. Leadership bonuses tied to margins while complaint numbers were buried 3 reports deep. She had seen all of it before in other industries. Different logos, same blindness. Her meal arrived in a simple covered tray. Chicken pasta bowl, warm bread, salad, cookie. She thanked the attendant sincerely and began eating. The businessman across the aisle stared at his plated salmon and then quietly traded with his wife for her pasta bowl. Robert noticed and laughed softly. You are influencing demand already. Vanessa smiled for the first time since boarding. People usually want fairness more than luxury once they taste the difference. The seatbelt sign chimed off. In the rear cabin, a baby began crying and then quickly settled when someone soothed him. The sound reminded Vanessa of years when she traveled with her mother on discount buses, watching elegant people walk past without seeing them. Her mother used to say, never beg a room to notice you. Build a room that cannot ignore others. Vanessa had never forgotten it. She folded her napkin and looked out the window where Chicago's lights now shimmered in the darkness like scattered gold. Robert, she said quietly, tomorrow we do not launch a new era. We end an old habit. Which habit? He asked. She fastened her seatbelt as the plane began descending. Mistaking status for worth. The cabin grew quiet once more, and somewhere beyond the clouds a city waited for sunrise, signatures, and the woman who intended to teach an airline how to look people in the eye. Chicago greeted them with cold night air, polished floors, and the restless energy of a city that never fully sleeps. The aircraft door opened at 8:41 p.m., and passengers rose with the usual impatience of modern travel, reaching for bags, checking phones, eager to reclaim motion after being confined. But first class did not move immediately. Several people remained seated, glancing toward Vanessa Caldwell as if unsure whether to speak. Respect often arrives late, but it still arrives. Vanessa stood, retrieved her tote, and stepped into the aisle. The businessman across from her offered a small nod. Good luck tomorrow. She returned it with grace. Thank you. Do better today. He absorbed the words like medicine and looked down. Robert Haynes followed her. Off the aircraft as ground staff lined the jet bridge with unusual alertness. Word had traveled ahead faster than luggage ever could. 2 senior managers from the Chicago hub waited near the terminal entrance, ties straightened, smiles careful. Welcome to O'Hare, Ms. Caldwell, one said. Cars are ready. Vanessa shook hands politely but without ceremony. She had no interest in being celebrated before work was done. As they walked through the concourse, travelers rushed around them under towering signs and fluorescent light. Screens flashed arrivals from Dallas, Seattle, Miami, Denver. The smell of coffee and baked pretzels drifted through the terminal. A janitor pushing a supply cart paused when he noticed the group of executives surrounding a woman in sneakers and a sweater. Vanessa slowed, stepped aside, and let him pass first. Good evening, she said. The man blinked, surprised, then smiled. Evening, ma'am. One of the managers watched this small exchange and quietly understood more about leadership than any seminar had ever taught him. Outside, black sedans idled at the curb. Robert opened the rear door for Vanessa, but she paused. "Where is the overnight customer service supervisor?" she asked. The Chicago manager hesitated. "At headquarters, I believe. Call him. Tell him to meet us there. Tonight. Especially tonight." She entered the car. Downtown Chicago rose ahead in glass and light as the sedan moved along the expressway. Bridges glowed over the river. Office towers pierced the sky like sharpened silver. Inside the car, Robert reviewed the final board count. "Two directors may resist the culture proposals," he said. "They prefer operational priorities." Vanessa looked out the window. Mistreating people becomes an operational cost eventually. They just hide it in different columns. Robert smiled faintly. "You always turn ethics into numbers." "No," she replied. "I turn numbers back into people." At headquarters, the top-floor conference room had remained lit. Coffee waited on a sideboard. Screens displayed route maps and quarterly reports no one was eager to discuss at this hour. 7 board members were already present, some in person, too. By video, all expecting a courtesy greeting before tomorrow's formal vote. Instead, Vanessa entered carrying her own bag, placed it beside the chair at the head of the table, and remained standing. Several members looked surprised. One older director whispered to another, likely still expecting someone else. Robert closed the door behind her. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "allow me to introduce your incoming Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Vanessa Caldwell." Chairs shifted. Faces recalculated. A director in cufflinks stood to shake her hand immediately. Another who had doubted the appointment now oversmiled with practiced speed. Vanessa acknowledged each greeting without being distracted by any of them. Then she said, "Before tomorrow's vote, I have one request." The room quieted. "At 6 a.m., I want the full transcript of every customer complaint involving humiliation, profiling, or disrespect from the last 24 months. One board member frowned. "That seems excessive for a transition meeting." Vanessa turned to him. "What seems excessive is waiting this long." No one spoke after that. The overnight customer service supervisor arrived 10 minutes later, slightly out of breath and carrying a laptop. Vanessa invited him to the table while several directors looked offended that a mid-level manager was entering their space. She noticed every expression. "Tell me," she said to the supervisor, "what frontline issue keeps repeating that no one upstairs fixes?" He swallowed hard. "Passengers feel unseen, ma'am. Staff feel unheard. Both sides become angry." Vanessa nodded once. "Good. You start at 7 tomorrow as interim vice president of customer experience." Shock traveled around the room like electricity. One director protested. "You cannot appoint executives before the vote." Vanessa met his gaze steadily. "Watch me recommend it." Robert almost laughed. The room fell silent again. Outside the glass walls, Chicago shimmered beneath the midnight sky. Inside, old habits were beginning to understand they had run out of runway. By 6:55 the next morning, the boardroom windows were washed in pale Chicago sunlight, and the city below looked clean, sharp, and expensive. Inside, however, the air carried the weight of people who knew comfort was about to be audited. Coffee cups lined the polished walnut table. Tablets glowed with financial dashboards. Directors whispered in careful tones that stopped whenever Vanessa Caldwell entered the room. She wore the same charcoal sweater beneath a tailored black coat, the same sneakers, the same refusal to costume herself for approval. Some of them still did not know what to do with that. She took the head chair without flourish and set a stack of printed documents before each member. "Good morning," she said. "You now have the complaint report I requested." Pages turned. Expressions changed. There were stories of elderly passengers spoken to like burdens, military families mocked for asking seating help, parents embarrassed over diaper bags, disabled travelers ignored, premium passengers praised while others were dismissed as delays with luggage. And threaded through too many entries was a common phrase: staff attitude. One director adjusted his glasses. These are anecdotal incidents. Vanessa looked directly at him. Repeated anecdotes become culture. Another director, younger and sharper, tapped the pages. Some of these settlements cost us real money. Yes, Vanessa said. Disrespect invoices eventually. Robert Haynes sat back and watched the room move toward her. One reluctant inch at a time. The formal vote began at 7:15. Legal counsel read the acquisition terms. Share transfers were confirmed. Governance clauses approved. Then each director gave a vote aloud. One by one, names were called and hands raised. Even those who disliked her methods disliked losing more. The final tally was unanimous. Vanessa Caldwell was now officially Chief Executive Officer and majority owner. There was polite applause, brief and restrained, the kind powerful people give when they are uncertain whether to celebrate or prepare. Vanessa thanked them with a nod. Now we begin. She pressed a button on the remote. Screens around the room changed from stock charts to a photograph of Gate 22 from the previous afternoon. Megan Whitmore stood at the scanner. Tyler Benson beside her. Several directors stiffened. This image was sent to me by 3 passengers before we landed, Vanessa said. By midnight, social media had 6 separate accounts of the incident. By dawn, our reputation had another scar. No one interrupted. Today's lesson is simple, she continued. People do not fear one rude employee. They fear a company that permits one. She turned to the interim vice president she had promoted hours earlier. Mr. Daniel Reyes, present the first reforms. The overnight supervisor, now wearing a borrowed suit and stunned gratitude, stood at the end of the table. His hands trembled for 3 seconds, then steadied. Effective immediately, he said, all customer-facing staff promotions will require service behavior scores, bias training certification, and peer review. Anonymous reporting channels launch this week. Compensation metrics now include complaint resolution quality. Directors exchanged looks. This was no symbolic speech. This was machinery being rebuilt. Vanessa added the second blow herself. And effective today, the terms premium passenger and low-value traveler are removed from all internal systems. One board member frowned. Those are segmentation tools. No, she said. They are confession tools. The room went silent. Her assistant entered quietly and placed 2 sealed envelopes beside her. Everyone knew before she spoke. Gate 22 personnel have been placed on administrative leave pending final review. Their positions will be filled by employees recommended for professionalism from frontline supervisors. She did not sound angry. She sounded efficient. That frightened them more. After the meeting, reporters gathered downstairs in the lobby, cameras waiting behind velvet ropes. Someone asked what her first priority would be. Vanessa stopped beneath the marble staircase and answered without notes. To build an airline where no traveler needs expensive clothes to receive basic respect. The quote would run nationwide by noon. Back upstairs, several executives who once ignored call center data were suddenly requesting listening tours. Managers who never visited gates were scheduling terminal walks. Pride can move slowly for years and then sprint when consequences arrive. Robert joined Vanessa by the window overlooking the river. You changed the company before breakfast, he said. She watched commuters crossing bridges below, each carrying invisible burdens no spreadsheet measured. No, she replied. I changed the excuse. Then she picked up her coat, asked for the schedule of employee town halls, and went to meet the people who had kept the airline running while others were busy admiring titles. 3 weeks later, Terminal B at Reagan National Airport looked almost exactly the same. Glass walls still reflected the morning sun. Departure screens still flickered with cities and gate changes. Rolling suitcases still rattled over polished floors. To an untrained eye, nothing had changed at all. But culture rarely announces itself with banners. It reveals itself in smaller things. A gate agent stepped out from behind the podium to help an elderly man lift his carry-on. A mother with 2 children was invited to board early before she needed to ask. A wheelchair passenger was greeted by name. Staff members made eye contact now. They listened before responding. They stood straighter, not from fear, but from pride rediscovered. Vanessa Caldwell entered the terminal alone, dressed in dark jeans, sneakers, and a navy sweater. No entourage, no photographers, no executive badge hanging from her neck. She preferred truth without warning. Since taking over, she had visited 6 airports unannounced, riding regular shuttles, standing in ordinary lines, asking ordinary questions. Reports told one story. Hallways told another. Today she wanted to see Gate 22 again. She arrived just as boarding began for a morning flight to Boston. A young gate agent named Sophia Martinez greeted each traveler with practiced warmth that still sounded genuine. "Good morning, welcome aboard. Take your time. We are glad to have you." Vanessa stood in line with the other passengers and watched. No one knew who she was except the station manager waiting discreetly 50 feet away, instructed not to interfere unless safety required it. A businessman ahead of Vanessa fumbled with 2 phones and a coffee while searching for his boarding pass. Sophia smiled patiently. "No rush, sir. We will get you there." Behind Vanessa, a college student apologized for bringing an oversized backpack. "You are fine," Sophia said. "Let us see what we can do." The line kept moving because kindness is often faster than arrogance. When Vanessa reached the scanner, Sophia looked at the pass, then looked at Vanessa with the same respect she had shown everyone else. "Good morning, Ms. Caldwell." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "You know me?" Sophia smiled. "Only because I studied the leadership memo photo after orientation. But I would greet you the same either way." Vanessa's expression softened. "That is the right answer." She stepped aside instead of boarding. "Keep going. I am watching." Sophia nodded once and returned to work without missing rhythm. 10 minutes later, boarding was complete. Vanessa remained near the podium reviewing notes when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Ms. Caldwell?" She turned. Tyler Benson stood there in a plain gray suit, no airline logo, holding a folder against his chest. He looked thinner, humbler, older in the way some people do after seeing themselves clearly. "I hoped I might run into you someday," he said. Vanessa regarded him calmly. "Did you?" He nodded. "I wanted to apologize properly. Not because of what happened to my job. Because of what happened to my character before that." She said nothing, letting silence do its work. Tyler continued. "I judged people for years based on clothes, tone, confidence, all the lazy shortcuts. I called it efficiency. It was cowardice." He handed her the folder. Inside was a letter of recommendation from a nonprofit transit service that hired and retrained displaced workers. "I start there next Monday," he said. "Entry level. They said customer empathy matters more than titles." Vanessa closed the folder and returned it. "Then perhaps you are finally in the right seat." His eyes lowered with gratitude. "Thank you for not humiliating me that day." She looked toward the gate where Sophia was helping a traveler reprint a boarding pass. "I did not need to. Life had already started." Tyler gave a quiet laugh, almost surprised he still could. Then wished her well and walked away carrying less pride and more possibility than before. A few minutes later, another figure approached slowly. Megan Whitmore, no longer in uniform, now wearing a simple cream coat and holding a paper cup of coffee. Her posture was careful, uncertain. "I do not expect forgiveness," she said. "I only wanted to say I was wrong." Vanessa studied her for a long moment. "About me?" Megan swallowed. "About many people." Vanessa nodded once. "That answer may save you years." Megan's eyes filled but did not spill. She thanked her and stepped aside. Boarding doors closed. The station manager finally approached. "Ma'am, would you like us to prepare the lounge?" Vanessa glanced around the busy terminal where strangers hurried through ordinary mornings carrying invisible stories. "No," she said. "I would like a window seat with everyone else." As she walked toward the aircraft, sunlight spread across the floor where 3 weeks earlier pride had stumbled. Some lessons echo longer than announcements. And that morning, an airport remembered what dignity looks like.